Namaste and welcome to Kala Yatra, a journey through traditional performing arts. Gratitude is the first step towards happiness. While I'm thankful for many things in life, I wanted to acknowledge the kind of artists we have among us in the New England area who have added so much value in the field of arts through performances, teaching, and also creating opportunities to share and grow arts more and more. Today with us, we have a very accomplished, talented, and experienced Bharatanatyam dancer who comes from a very strong background in music and dance. She belongs to the Vaduvur style of Bharatanatyam, and she's the prime disciple of Guru Radha. She's been performing for more than 3 decades. She's the recipient of senior scholarship from the Government of India and was also the sponsored artist for a state government cultural association of India called the Iyal Isai Nataka Mandram. A graduate from MIT Sloan School of Management, she also works part-time for WGBH Boston. She is the founder director of Pillai Fine Arts Academy, Newton, Mass. She has presented multiple solo and group productions, both traditional and contemporary. I welcome Shrimati Sunanda Narayanan. Namaste, Sunanda. Welcome to Kala Yatra, a journey through traditional performing arts. So thankful to you for sharing your precious time with us in sharing your journey as well as your experiences. So, how are you? How is your family?
Thank you so much for inviting me for this. I feel it's such a privilege for me to be here and share my thoughts. By God's grace, my family and I are all doing well. Of course, it has been an unprecedented time for everybody.
Absolutely.
And I think more and more the early anxiety and the early frustrations that all of us had are getting replaced with a sense of resignation at some point and also gratitude, which is more important.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes.
So, obviously, initially there was a lot of uncertainty, anxiety, also as we are separated from our families in India and worry about people there, people here. And we, like everybody else, spent early days looking at numbers
Right.
and graphs. But soon, I think we just decided that was not the right way to spend this time.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I have been very grateful for the family time because I have my older son headed off to college in a couple of weeks.
Oh, very nice, huh?
So, because
Okay.
of that, I think this time to be together has been extra special.
Absolutely. I can imagine. Yeah. Yeah.
All of us have done the household chores and everything together. So, it has been a learning experience, I think.
Very nice.
Very, you know, I would say largely happy for the way things are right now and enjoying neighborhood walks in the good weather and lots of cooking together and things like that.
Absolutely wonderful to hear that. Of course, we have to be thankful because you're not greatly affected by this situation, not like people who are really, really, suffering in many ways.
Absolutely.
So I wanted to just show my gratitude and acknowledgement towards the artists in our area and wanted to basically recognize the kind of contribution all of you have made. So I'm very thrilled about this interview with you. So how has COVID-19, sure, sure. Thank you, Sananda. How has COVID-19 changed your classes and your performances? Um, and how have you and your students adapted to this situation?
Quite dramatic, I must say. So, going back to March, the plan was for us to go to Cleveland to present a group production which we premiered here in Boston last year. So, even the week before the shutdown, we were all still practicing for that and having a rehearsal. So, obviously, that has gotten indefinitely postponed at this point. Secondly, in my own dance class, again, the suggestion to take it online came the week of the shutdown from one of my dance parents who happens to be a doctor. And at the same time, my husband, who's a university professor, was also considering it for classes. So it all worked out. We kind of looked at the technology together, and I sent a message out to students saying, why don't we try it for this weekend? And I think people were quite grateful to do that at that time, given the fear. And the first couple of classes definitely was a learning experience because there is a perceptible time lag and also right-left confusion for the very young students. So I'd say,
Absolutely, yeah.
depending on internet connection, also when I look at four dancers together on the screen, the movements come slightly off for each of them, right, from my music, and differently so. So I would say there was a period of adjustment, but it has worked quite remarkably well, and in a way that I absolutely would have not acknowledged before March. I did not believe in it, and I said I would not do this. So I think, they say necessity is the mother of invention. So I think we've all
Absolutely.
learned on the job.
Right.
And I can, some of the students obviously had more time. So they took multiple classes with me each week. The progress that they've made is unbelievable.
Right.
It has been a really very positive experience, I think.
Yes.
The
Yes.
thing I miss is the chit chat before and after the class. I feel like it's business, you come into the class, you start off, and at the end of the class, it seems a bit cold when we hit end meeting for all.
I know. I know. Yeah.
So I miss that. But other than that, I must say, largely unaffected, 100% attendance. Nobody has missed classes for the most part. So it has been more busy than usual. Uh,
Okay.
but on the whole, I would say it a very, very positive learning experience.
Very nice. Very, very nice to hear that. I actually wondered when I started to change my classes online. I have kind of done online classes, not a lot, just a little bit here and there, because I totally don't believe in virtual learning. I always prefer in-person classes, especially with respect to talam and the pace and the tempo and everything.
Of course.
And initially, I did struggle a little bit, but then, we get used to it. We adapt and get used to it. But I was still wondering, how are the dance teachers doing this? How is it working for them? Because, it is, so different. There is time lag. And then, the music that the teacher plays here is going to be playing a little later. And how are they going to, with respect to the visual, how are they going to get the perfect idea of what is happening on the other end? So I was wondering, and I'm so glad.
I would say it almost makes for me my life a little bit easier because when I'm seeing people right close to each other, if one person's arm is a little bit off or their foot is a little bit off, it actually pops up, it highlights that.
Right.
So and for Abhinayam, I make them move a little bit closer to the monitor. The one feature of Zoom which I love and my students have loved is the record feature. So
Right.
any new learning, immediately just press the record button. You have your clip ready at the end of the class and I can email it to them.
Right.
So I feel like there are certain things that technology has made much easier.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm so thankful because I see that most people have been productive, they've been busy, they've been occupied, as well as they've learned a lot.
Yes.
So I would say this is a blessing in disguise in some ways.
Yes, I agree.
So what I'm most thrilled about is to hear about your experiences, the most cherished experiences with your gurus. And of course, I want to know all about your family and also your experience being a teacher and a guru to many students. Basically, why I'm saying that is there is a lot of internalizing of the compositions from the music, right? The lyrics from the music, and you have to emote it in a virtual form, a visual form. And I always have felt that that will definitely take you closer in the spiritual path.
Yes.
So that's why I say, how is your experience being a guru as well as a teacher, acharya and a guru? Because you have to teach those values and those important morals that come along with the compositions from, as a dancer, I would like to know your experience.
All very good questions. I'll start with my gurus because I owe them everything. And, I started my early dance training under Guru S.K. Kameshwaran in Chennai. And after my Arangetram, I had the good fortune of also learning until present day with my very esteemed Guru Srimati Radha. She is a legend and a daily inspiration to me. So I owe her everything. That is on the dance side. On the music side, since my family is very musical, I must acknowledge my grandmother, Srimati Anantalakshmi Sadagopan, my mother, Srimati Sujata Vijayaraghavan, and the music gurus. I've had early training under Sri Neelakanta Iyer, but after that with Bombay Sri Ramachandraya, and of course the inimitable Chemmangudi Srinivas Iyer, who was my guru for many years.
Amazing, amazing.
So whatever I am today, I owe to all of them. And my happiest memories are, I think, my dance classes with Radha Auntie, as I call her, and my party classes with, of course, my grandmother and Ramchandraya sir and Chemmangudi Mama. I can, I must have done some punyam in my past to deserve all of that. It is the absolutely most cherished thing in my life. I'm going to put my musical training aside because we're talking mostly about dance today. But I feel I am what I am as a dancer because of my musical training.
Absolutely.
So,
yeah.
My earliest memories are about my grandmother and my mother singing, if not for me, for some of our older cousins at home who were already dancing, and my, loving those musical compositions and listening to them in the background. And cherished memories, I'm going to go straight to Radha Auntie because, she's just such an inspiration for me. There are so many, I don't know, but I'm going to talk about one or two in particular, I would say. With Radha Auntie, the thing is, it was a lot of fun to be her student because she treats you like her friend and child. It's not a strict relationship as a teacher at all. In fact, people coming into our class used to feel that we were bossing her more than she was bossing us. She would only say, hi, come on in. It was like such a jolly class to go into. And so a lot of fun. And she would cook amazing things for us. Her mother was an amazing cook. So we'll walk into the house and say, we'll only dance after we finish eating first and things like that. And, class was just so much fun. But when she put us in her dance hall, it was just like she was a different person. Not, again, super friendly, but firm and no excuses. You can't say today my knee is hurting, I'm not feeling so great, I slept late last night or whatever, I have exam tomorrow. No excuse. And she didn't say it that way, but she modeled that behavior. So we would see her even when she was very sick, even when she had had a surgery, even when things went really bad for her, completely give 100% in the class and in performance.
Wow.
I have seen her do that time and again. And when your teacher, who's so much older than you, is doing that, even today, I called her last week just to check in on her in the pandemic. And she said she wakes up every day, does her yoga, her running, cooks for herself, cleans the house. She said, I do the entire Adaviset and maybe I do, Jatishwaram Tillana, all the tough pieces just to make sure I can do it every day.
Oh my God.
She's 80 this year. And it is just humbling when you have a guru like that.
Absolutely. I'm so amazed.
She is just pretty amazing.
Yeah.
And two particular things that stand out in my mind. Once she was teaching us Bhaviyami Ragama, my sister and myself, and one of us, it was the Rama Ravana Yuddham, the scene where they're in battle and we were both battling. And the scene where Rama, has Ravana down on the ground and he says, go today and come back tomorrow.
Right.
So she came on the dance floor to show us how to do that. And I think I was Rama and my sister was Ravana or vice versa. I don't even remember now. One of us was on the floor, one of us was standing up. And she did what she had to. And she just turned, like after showing Rama's expression, there was such anger, but controlled anger there, right? Because he really can't stand Ravana. But even then there is that sense of fairness and righteousness, right? And both of us, my sister and I, just gasped when we saw that. We were like, I remember. And Radha was like, what happened? What happened? She stopped and said, and I said, Auntie, she thought there was some insect or something in the room. They responded. And both my sister and I remember this, we had tears in our eyes. And she said, what happened? And I said, Auntie, we saw Rama, Auntie, right now.
Wow.
You know, it
I'm
was that.
getting goosebumps just hearing this,
No,
Sunanda.
it was when you have had a lifetime's immersion in something, and you have ingrained those personalities, and you're able to just be that person
Right.
or that personality for that moment. Her internalization was so complete. She
Hmm.
didn't even know it, right? She just thinks she's modeling. But that is a moment till today that my sister and I talk about. Like
Wow.
that, when she does Krishna Nibegane, I can see that child Krishna. She will make me see that child in front of me.
That
You
is
know?
the idea of dance, right? Because with music, you still sing in praise of the Almighty. You sing to the Almighty. There is still the Dvaita philosophy there. The Advaita philosophy actually comes to play when you become the Lord Himself, right?
Absolutely.
When you are playing Krishna, you become Krishna.
Yes.
And that to me is like just, many levels.
I have seen that again and again and again with my teacher. Whatever role she plays, it is just Parashurama. You know, you don't think much about that character because it's not a character we, read a lot about.
Right.
I've seen her do Parashurama in the Dashavatara Varnam. That will bring a tear to your eye. The way she will do the dilemmas that he faced. Or, once I remember, of course, another very cherished memory is when she has had me do Natwangam for her or sing for her on stage.
Oh
And
my God.
those were early experiences for me. In my late teens itself, she started having me do those things. And there was no great formal training or anything given. One day, the talam was put in my hand and she said, conduct the class for me today. And she would get up and dance. So those are all memories and travels with her all over
Right.
India, abroad. Just too many fabulous memories. Yeah.
Very nice. Very, very nice. I have had the honor and blessing of having Radha auntie come to my class, party class once, during one of the classes. I think she was staying at a couple of your students' house.
Yes.
And then they were coming to party class at the church I teach. So she came. She sat through the class and she blessed me. And I have a picture with her. So I'm
Very
I'm so happy and thrilled to have met her. And of
Such
course,
a simple person, but such a great artist. Great
absolutely, yeah.
artist.
I
Yes.
I totally agree with you.
Yes. So
So yeah.
when you talked about what are the values we learned, like I said first, don't give excuses.
Hmm.
Well, it may seem a bit tough, but in some respect, we need to model that ourselves also
Right.
as teachers. And I feel my gurus modeled that for me. Of course, the utter, what do you call it? Mm, I'll say devotion and sincerity to their art forms.
Hmm.
Whether it was Chemagudi Mama getting ready for his radio recording or Ramachandraya coming at 5:30 a.m. in pouring rain, walking because the bus had stopped to my house to conduct my class. He was retired in his late 70s. He came holding one umbrella. He said, I'm a Bombay man. I don't fear the rain. 5:30, he showed up in my house to take class for me. Pouring rain. And or Radha auntie, on so many occasions, whether she had a fever, whatever it was, showing up. Even today, if she has a performance, the sincerity with which she puts in that daily practice. She says, I am not at your age. I mean, I shouldn't be saying that I don't have half her fitness, where she says, I can show up on stage and just try to wing it. When I give it, I have to give it seriously, that effort and the practice that she will put in. That is a real lesson to me in an age where all of us just say, we can wing it somehow.
Right.
That
Right.
sincere effort. Those are all, I think, morals and keeps me, I think, in awe of these people that I have seen.
Right. Very nice. So, how about your experience being a teacher and a guru to many of your students?
I think I have learned so much being a teacher, and it is one of the greatest joys of my life.
Hmm.
So I can say when I started teaching, I was in my early 20s when I moved here after I got married. And I used to be, I think, very impressed by talent, right?
Hmm.
Clearly, some kids get things a little bit easier than other kids. Their bodies are just more coordinated easily.
Right.
But I think as I have matured as a teacher, I hope, and there's hopefully a long way to go. But I have learned to value work ethic above everything else.
Hmm.
Where, I was not a dancer for whom things came easy. I struggled.
Hmm.
that ability to stick with it and say, this is not coming to me easily today, but I will get there. And that tenacity, I think I have learned as a teacher to really appreciate in my students. And it's very moving for me to see these children so invested in their learning. Of course, the ones for whom it comes easy, it's I would say less effort, more joy. For the ones it doesn't come that easy, I just want to encourage them and bring them along even more than the others, because I just feel it's my responsibility as a guru.
Absolutely, very beautifully put. Yeah, that's definitely the mark of a good teacher, because it is easy to teach somebody who already has the talent or the inclination, towards it. It is definitely more challenging to teach students who are not naturally inclined to it, and that joy is definitely something else, right? I'm so happy you brought that. So when it comes to Bharatanatyam, there are multiple aspects of it, like the abhinaya, the footwork, the hand gestures, the eye movements. And I have aspired to be a dancer for the longest time in my life. I've always aspired. I still do in some ways. And I go in front of the mirror and do some abhinaya. I'm very, shameless to admit this. I still try to emote something in front of the mirror.
Aparna, you would be a beautiful dancer. You should do it.
Thank you. Many people have told me that, but something, I don't know, something is just holding me back. I don't know what it is. My parents made me quit long time ago when I was a child. And everything about dance was just so fascinating to me. As a child, it was the costume, it was the, ghungru, it was the kind of movements that people do, make like formations and things like that. And then I still am evolving as a Rasika of dance. So I have come to understand the various aspects from different perspectives. Of course, I owe it all to my husband, because he's very, very, very particular about quality in every single thing. Wow. About Aramandi, about Adami, I can't, begin to tell you how much of importance he gives for quality. So being around him, I've evolved as a Rasika. And I still imitate some dance movements and some dance abhinayas every now and then. And I have always wanted to ask this question to people who are, so invested in dance, that which aspect really interests you the most? I'm very curious to know.
I'm not going to say something original, but it's a one line from a poem that my mother wrote once. It's a four-line poem, but it says, Udal Kadanda Natanam, one line in that poem, which says the dance which is beyond the body, and Tannai Maranda Rasikan. In that, the Rasika that loses themselves, right? So, yes, I think technique is very important, and having proper technique, whether it is the perfect aramandi or the stance or the posture or ability to emote or hastams or footwork, all of that is important. But again, as I have grown as a human being and had life experiences, and as a teacher and as a dancer, what I most look for in a performance is that aha moment that moves me, that I take back and I think about and I say, wow, that one glance, that one look, it is not about how high did they jump or how fast could they spin or how much stage space did they cover, which is, I feel, at a more superficial level, still necessary, because dance is a visual art form. You need to have the proper costume. You need to have very neat technique. It needs to be impressive or it will not sustain attention. But for me, it is definitely abhinayam, which is moving and which is authentic.
Right.
If it is bhakti, I want to feel that bhakti which they are feeling. I have seen that, as I said, with my guru. I have seen that with dancers I really admire, like Nartiki Natraj. The abhinayam, that the bhakti that they can bring to their performance, or the Shringaram, or my abhinayam mentor, Srimati Bragha Bessel, the way I have been moved, I have shed a tear at some of her performances. So for me, that is the core of Bharatanatyam.
Right.
I think that goes to the root of what I admire.
If I may add here, or even ask, I feel Abhinaya is most important because we are all emotional beings,
Mhm.
and through our emotions is how we express anything in life, right?
Of course.
And all the we hear that love is not a noun, love is a verb. So you show love, right? So how do you show Shringara? How do you show anger? How do you show frustration? That expression is a very, very important aspect. That's
Yes.
of course we can't separate anything. I know as a dancer that's how you would feel, and I've heard this from many dancers as well. You know, it's inseparable. All these aspects are together. But in a few experiences I've seen, just with minimal expression, they
Mhm.
can move you to tears.
Yes.
And as you rightly pointed out, from my experience, I also I have felt that Abhinaya is, it just takes you to a new dimension of, Bharatanatyam itself. So thank you so much for sharing that perspective of yours.
Absolutely.
Um, Now, when we look at the choreography of dance, so what is good choreography, or what aspects do you think one should possess to be even a choreographer?
Okay, I think I'm going to elaborate a little bit on this because I've thought a fair bit about this. So, I think the most important, if you ask me, one most important thing you need to be a dance choreographer, you have to have knowledge of music.
Hmm.
Having learnt a few dance pieces cannot make you a choreographer.
Wow.
Unless you can take in music, and by that I mean lyrics, the poetry of the lyrics, having background knowledge about the particular mythology or kshetram that you're working with, or the ability to research that poetry and think more widely about it based on poetic input you've had, ragam, talam, and awareness of talam. Okay, so obviously it depends on the piece you're choreographing. Your skills for a Jatishwaram are very different from a skills for a Javali.
Right.
So that is all there. But without musicality and a sensitivity to music, there can be no choreography.
Right.
So I tell all my students they must compulsorily get training in music if they're trying to learn dance.
Hmm.
Because you can see it in the body of a dancer if they know music or not.
Right.
And
Right.
often I ask parents say, "Oh, that's a huge commitment of time," but the arts, those two are inalienable. If
Right.
you're learning dance without learning music, and by that I don't mean it ideally, obviously, would be Carnatic music because it is allied, but
Right.
have some music in your life. Because
Hmm.
if you don't have that sensitivity to Sangadi or Jaru or Gamakam, it doesn't come into the way you move.
Right.
So, first, I think that is important. Second, I think there has to be a deep commitment to whatever style you're in.
Hmm.
By that, I'm not talking about being rigid. But
Hmm.
my Vadya Ramchandra used to tell me, he said, listen very widely to Pat.
Hmm.
But your music should not sound like Aviyal Sangeetam. You know, he would say, you remain true to your Patantaram and your style and your aesthetic. You have come to learn from me because you like the way my music is, the
Right.
values that I possess in music. Saying that, don't meander.
Hmm.
Adati would say the same thing. She said, in especially now on YouTube, because there's so much dance available, so much good dance available, which is
Right.
both a blessing and a curse, because what fits a certain style and a body type and cannot immediately be pulled into your dance without that looking awkward or looking like it doesn't fit.
Very
Okay,
well put. Huh.
so yes, you have to be aware of general trends in
Hmm.
dance. There are certain things you don't want to look like something fossilized, but at the same time, it has to be very, very rooted in your body or your
Hmm.
style. If something doesn't fit Valvoor style, it shouldn't be in my choreography. No matter
Okay.
how much I admire it in somebody else's style. Not
Hmm.
because I don't admire it. I love it when that person does that particular movement. But if it is not true of my style, I shouldn't bring it in. So
Hmm.
that is something when I discuss with my students, I give them lots of YouTube videos to watch. Sometimes I make them watch with me.
Hmm.
And then I'll say, what did you admire about that? Is that something you would bring into your choreography? Why or why not?
Ah.
And I say there has to be a lot of emphasis when you're trying something new. Say you're trying something a little trendy. the rest of it must hold that. So I feel, don't make everything out there. Have a strong traditional base and maybe one unusual movement in there that creates that aha.
Right.
So I feel that, once Alanmelvalli Akka spoke here at MIT, and I loved listening to what she said, made so much sense to me. She talked about how her Vadyar, after teaching her many, many pieces, gave her a choreographic exercise to do. It was just a part of a tilana. She came back and she had put in it all the adavas that she knew she could do very nicely.
Okay.
And some new movements and, put a lot of thought and effort because it was her first time. And she said, her Vadyar said, fulla idula vandu minukku irukuma sarakku illiye. Meaning there is a lot of form without substance.
Right.
And that for him, he said it's like just putting icing on the cake without having any cake to hold it up. Right? So this is an analogy that I heard. It's borrowed from her speech that I cite often, where I say, first of all, have a strong grounding in what we call the meiyadavus, the core ways. Then you can build from there. But don't, have a fancy core way with fancy adavus, which are trendy. Somehow, for me, that does nothing. You can always go back to full traditional pieces and have them look beautiful. That is always a very safe fallback. But from there, you can build and make ideas that are relevant, that are contemporary, that are connected to today.
Right. So thank you very much for bringing that term. I was just about to ask you, what is the difference between traditional choreography and contemporary choreography? And I think it's important to do both because in the modern times, it's also important to be relevant.
Of course.
But we need to distinguish these two so that one doesn't, get confused between the two, right?
In those, I would say there are two important distinctions. Is your movement vocabulary itself going to be contemporary, or are the songs that you pick going to be contemporary, or both? Right? So obviously, Abhinayam, dance is a language. You can adapt it to communicate any idea.
Right.
So thanks to my mother being a thinker and scholar, and she was always on the lookout for both beautiful, old, new, current poetry. And we have danced to lots of different kinds of poetry. We've done Vairamuthu sir's Maram in Marangalai Paduven. We've taken excerpts and done it. It's Pudu Kavide. It doesn't even have a structure. We've done that dance. I've taken a Japanese haiku and danced that.
Wow.
Done a lot of modern poetry on environment, on, social issues. We've done all of that. That is one choreography that calls for fresh thinking, one approach. The other approach is what I see today, what one of the critics in the Hindu labeled as designer adavus. Where the adavu vocabulary itself seems to have changed. Suddenly we feel, the Aramandi where we were always taught to keep the heels so close together. Suddenly I find dancers dancing with the feet far apart. Or they have their back turned to the audience a lot. Or using the diagonal lines rather than the familiar Natyarambam a lot. Or, going for triple jumps across the stage, which of course we would do in moderation. But for me now, it almost seems like seeing a briga every 2 faces. Yes, it is impressive, but how much to use it?
Right.
And something is a stunt. It has value because it appeals to everybody in the audience, including your lay audience. It is those stunts must be, if at all, used in a very limited way.
Right.
So those are my choreographic ideals.
It's like the difference between Vidvat and Vidyai, right?
Yes. Right. I think technically showing off and trying to be innovative for the sake of innovative seems shallow. But it comes from a place of deep introspection, research, and thought. I think it's beautiful. I mean, there are many young dancers in India now doing some fabulous choreography and very intelligent approaches to things. And I'm very, very heartened when I see all of that. And there's so much to learn. I feel like whenever I go and I watch those performances, it's extremely inspiring. So yes, I think choreography, definitely a rethink is required, because some of the ideas from yesteryear, I think if we keep on doing it the same way again, we're not going to have any audience left.
Right. I mean, it's not just the audience. It's more to make people see the different side of it, right? It's not like absent or anything. I wouldn't say this was absent.
Yes.
More of the traditional form was being brought out most of the time. And, I just, feel like if you're adding some folky movements to some contemporary music, and if more people are able to, enjoy it as well as are able to relate to the message you're bringing through that, and why not, right? There is nothing wrong in that.
You touched on a very important point where you said the music itself was contemporary.
Yes.
So for that kind of music, that choreography will fit perfectly.
Yes.
And I often do that. If depending, that's why I said that ear for music is important. Take a Chenchuruti Tilana and you give it a folk treatment, it's not going to fit.
That again, I'm going to ask you this again, because my view is, instead of mixing traditional and contemporary with respect to music or dance, contemporary music, traditional dance form, traditional music, contemporary dance form, instead of mixing them both, would you say that people should have the clarity to find the distinction between and keep them separate and keep both alive? Would you say, as a dancer?
I would say I would mostly agree, but I don't know about compartmentalizing it that way, because I have seen, and I applaud the efforts to do that. I have seen artists like Shri Vaibhav Arekar from Maharashtra. I have seen him take traditional songs, whether it is a mate or whether it is a, Purvi Tilana, Tirkokaranam Maidinagantha Bhagavathars, and give it a very contemporary treatment. And it is breathtakingly beautiful.
Okay.
So I have seen that. I have seen very traditional handling of those pieces. Not that, again, he doesn't do anything that is jarring. But it takes extreme intelligence to be able to choreograph like that.
And deep understanding and knowledge, as you mentioned a little earlier.
Choreography itself should only be done after many, many, many years of immersion in the field.
Right.
Otherwise, don't go to choreography at all.
Right. We have Manodharma in music. And I wonder, what is the kind of Manodharma dancers are allowed to have, or dancers might have experienced on stage?
Very good question. So dance used to be almost completely Manodharma, right? If you think about Balama's time, when they say that she would signal to the musicians when she was done with the line, or she would just sing it herself and dance it because she was not exhausted with all the ideas that she had. They say she could just do Krishnani Begane for so long. Or I have listened to a recording of her singing Vara Dirundal before Kantimati, the Pillai Tamil. And unbelievable number of repetitions of that line. Or Deva Devanum Shabdam, where unbelievable number of repetitions of that line. So I can only imagine what kind of Manodharmam she must have possessed to continue doing that.
I know.
But again, to do that, think of the vidvat she would have had in terms of erudition, poetry, music, dance, for all of that to just keep flowing.
I know, yeah.
Right? And or even with my Guru Radha, she would, when she did Abhinayam, she would say, Nandu, when I'm going to be done. You just have an instinct for that, then change to the next line. Right? So it was, you'd have to be watching her very carefully, because you don't know how many times she needs a particular line.
Right?
Won't tell. Sadly, I think that is so over choreographed and over rehearsed these days, where I find even very established dancers today, even the Neraval with their musicians has been rehearsed, so that very clearly you can see that movement could not have occurred spontaneously in that moment. It is clearly inspired by the music, but set. It is not being done on stage because it is too perfect. It is like a too perfect Kalpana Swaram or a too perfect Neraval.
Right.
Somehow it is not more beautiful than a less perfect one.
Right.
Because it lacks that spontaneity.
Yeah.
But again, it comes from lack of awareness of music. You cannot do Manodharmam in dance, or you should know the lyrics really well. And you should have poetic thought, right? So, Nematale Mayanura, to respond to the Sangadi, first of all, you should have that sensitivity in the ear that Sangadis are sounding different. This is different from the previous one. So, if there's a fast Sangadi, your hand and your body must spontaneously move. That is one aspect. Right. Also, ideas. If you haven't watched enough dance, where are the ideas going to come from?
Very true. We should probably try something like that. You shouldn't know what I'm singing. I
Yes.
just maybe give you the song, not the
Just the
repetition.
lyrics. If you have the lyrics, and then take your ideas with you.
Yeah, yeah. Because I've always wondered. I have seen that everything has been choreographed,
Yes.
pre-rehearsed, and everything is. Despite that, of course, there are some. Sometimes the musicians just go on, and then the dancer. I've seen that happen in some professional events as well. But that's what made me wonder. Of course, if there is Manodharma involved, then that's going to happen. They are going to have some kind of miscommunication, and
Okay.
it's totally fine. That's exactly my point. It's totally
In
fine.
those
It's so
days,
natural.
yes, in those days, the musicians were very connected with the dancers, right? They'll always work in a team, and the understanding must have been so good that those moments of misfiring would have been very low.
Right.
But I think obviously the experience of the dancer and the musician has to be to such a degree that is possible.
Right.
And I can understand at Arangetram level, or even 5-10 years past Arangetram level, setting things for them and saying, sing this line this many times.
Yeah.
But it's sad if that just continues for the rest of your life.
Right.
You don't have the improv ability.
That is very true. I'm so happy I had this. It was not planned. This question just popped in my mind, and I just felt like asking. And I'm so thankful to you for clarifying that to me. Thank you very much. I'm sure many would benefit from this.
Thank you.
So, as a dancer, what have been your strengths and struggles? And as a student and a teacher, how have you overcome that?
Good, very good food for thought. I'll start with my struggles. So I was not at all a natural as a dancer. I can tell you, as a child, my sister was much more focused, much more capable, both for dance and music, and therefore my Vadyar used to, give her all his attention in the class. I was just like a sidekick in the class for the most part.
I can't believe that, though.
No, every word is true. It's very true. I'm not trying to be modest or anything. It is just the truth. And I know even before my Arangetram, there was serious questions in my parents' mind whether I was ready to go on stage. But they had kind of promised me that I was going on stage, and therefore I was put in with my sister. My mother, because she's a dance scholar, was fully aware of where I was, but she was hoping that these opportunities would motivate me to practice more and do better. I think my sister was always that person. I can't say I was. Afterwards, when I had an opportunity to be inspired by and seek training with my Guru Radha, there were a lot of things that she needed to fix. First, starting with my posture. I grew tall very quickly when I was 11 and was very lean. So I used to be bent literally like a hook. And for 2 years, I remember her patting me on my back every time, whether I was sitting in class and watching or dancing or just simply standing. She'll say, Nandu Nimra, means straighten up. This became like this thing in my ear, that constant Nimra, Nimra, Nimra. And, I went from being really bent to quite straight. And I completely owe her that. And she told me, it's not just when you're dancing. Even when you're not dancing, your posture must reveal that you're a dancer.
I can see that because I totally admire the way you carry yourself in any outfit, in any occasion, even when you are standing in a queue for dinner at any Arangetram event or anything. I've never seen you slouch. You're always, you carry yourself so beautifully and gracefully and so nicely. So it's very, it's very inspiring actually to see that. And of course, people
that you're so kind.
People tell usually that with the posture, you can say if they are a dancer or not.
True, I think that. But my teacher just relentlessly worked with me on that. So that was a struggle, definitely. And there were lots of behaviors that I had to unlearn and relearn, focusing my eyes on my hands. Agility, flexibility, talam awareness, I'd say was there to a good degree. But, once posture gets fixed and once your eyes focus, and the way she taught me the concept of parve, that every adavu has to be learnt with its parve. You can't attach it later when you learn items. So, in fact, she made us go back and learn from Tayate, even though we had completed Arangetram, because she said, I want you to learn it exactly the way I want it. It should be that precise. Or even the way you turn, from going from here to here. It's not a slow movement, it's staccato. And how your eyes must come with laser focus to the center. Things like that, or how to use the wrist. A lot of wrist movement in our style. And little subtle movements, what we call kampitam, little nod of the head. So all of those things I was not even aware. So clearly, that the body has to train around those things, and it didn't come easy to me. I think for years I had to work at it. So those were definitely my struggles. Time management more, but that's later in my life as responsibilities and family and all of that grew. That has become the increasing struggle. Current struggle, I would say, is with maintaining fitness, making sure that my knees are functioning and things like that. So at each stage, the struggle has been different.
But your tenacity is probably your strength.
Yes, I would say that, because at least because it became my passion. When I went to my teacher, she was just so inspiring and so fun. The class was so fun. I would fix up class and live in her class every day. She didn't have as many students at that time. She became very busy later, but she had time for me every day. And she'd say, she come from college or school. So we would just go every day and spend hours there. She will dance, the next person will dance. There was not like 1 hour of class or anything like that. Then she'll give me my tiffin, she'll feed me. So I'll be sitting there, I'll have my homework, I'll do it, then I'll go dance. So that was like an immersion for years and years and years. It was never, then generally she'll say, evening I'm going to the temple, I'll drop you off at home. Or she'll say, ask your father to come and pick you up, and late in the evening I'll go home. So it went from being something I didn't like at all to being an obsession. So the tenacity, I think, came naturally. It didn't feel forced.
Very beautiful. Very nice. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. I am definitely inspired by you for many things. Posture is one. And as you rightly point your...
I didn't answer your question fully. You also said, what are strengths? Oh, you can, if you still want to ask me about struggle, I can stay there and then I'll go to strength.
You can actually continue. Sorry, you can continue.
Sorry, I realized it was an incomplete answer.
No worries. Go ahead.
Strength, I don't know what I would say. Maybe awareness of music and talam. Because I think definitely my teacher used to, anytime, my mother used, because of who she is, used to keep on bringing new music into the class, new items that she would recommend to my teacher. And Radha would always look at me, my sister and my cousin, all of us from the same family, while choreographing it. Once we did it as a team and performed it, lots of kids in the class would ask for the same piece and learn those pieces because they were beautiful. But somehow the fact that we were musical, I think, helped her, and she would think through those pieces with us. So that was a strength. And I think the ability to juggle a lot of things. That is, till today, that for me is a good thing.
Very nice. I'm actually very happy for you, and I can see all of those strengths playing in favor of you. I also want to, off screen, I want to take some tips on how you maintain your physical form like that. That is the most inspiring thing for me from you. I definitely want to talk about it after we finish this interview. So you work part-time at WGBH Boston, and you're also a dance instructor at the dance department at Harvard University. And you have kept your passion and profession separate. So what have been the struggles and advantages of that? And how have you found balance between the two?
Balance is an ongoing, I think, goal. It is always just beyond reach.
It's a mirage.
Mirage, because people often think, looking from the outside, obviously because they don't see the imbalance part, they think they're very balanced. But for people at home, often my kids or my husband will say, why did you take on so much? So that is always there. So I don't think balance is achieved, but I continue trying. So one part of that, after obviously finishing my MBA and all that, was the decision to go from full-time to part-time work, because I realized dance and family are two very important things in my life.
Right.
And I like to be community and socially involved as well. So there are just too many things, and I didn't want to make a choice. So kind of greedy about keeping it all, even in small quantities in my life. So I'll say I have a small dance class, any point of time between 15, 20 students, 4 hours of daily work at WGBH, and of course family time for my family and whatever community involvement I have. Okay,
right.
Those are how I have compartmentalized my life, and some of them are passion, some of them are because I believe in what it is, right? But it is also a compromise, because it means not having a huge impact in any particular field. So mine is not a very large dance class, as you know. At work, I cannot climb the corporate ladder because I'm only there part-time. Nobody takes a
Yeah.
part-time person that seriously. So it is a compromise at several levels, but that is what gives me satisfaction and what I am happy doing. So that is why I do what I do. And I believe there are avenues for creative work, like in dance or dance class, or even cooking in the kitchen. And then there are avenues for just sitting down and doing work which is not as creative, but still fulfilling in other ways.
Right. Very, very interesting, because that is exactly what helps you in balance. If we go full force on any one thing, you will end up creating imbalance. And then you will end up again pulling back and compromising to create balance. So
Yes.
pulling back and compromising and keeping a minimum boundary for everything. When it comes to being a mom, I would say it's very hard to go full force. And then
Yes.
when it comes to being a teacher, it's very hard to go full force. Or a performer. You've managed to do everything. You've managed to be a family woman, you've managed to be a dancer, teacher, performer, and then you have also traveled and you also are working part time. So I think you are a very balanced person in many ways.
Thank you. I don't know.
And it is very important. You have brought some very important aspects for younger generation to look up to and look for. When they choose their careers, whether it is passion or profession, it doesn't matter. That balance is key, and very beautifully you have put it. Thank you. Um, how do you motivate yourself when I'm not sure if you have felt low, or because of the compromises that you make, if you have felt, oh, I wish I had that, or in some ways, oh, I should have done this more, something like that. On occasions like that, how do you keep motivating yourself to keep up with what you do?
One thing I must say, this is from my husband. He'll always say, make the decision and don't look back.
Hmm.
So that is something is hard for me. I can't say I don't look back, like you say, but I have learned not to second guess my decisions, because I have been responsible completely for my decisions. Nobody has
Hmm.
forced me to make these decisions in life. Whether it is choosing a part time, I used to be in consulting and traveling and all of that. Before my MBA, I took a part time. I had those options. I even started a company right out of MBA and all that. I chose actively to do what I'm doing now, whether it is
Hmm.
going to WGBH, going from full time to part time, being a mom and having 2 kids, or dancing but having a very small class. Every single one of those is my own conscious decision,
Hmm.
and any of them are alterable. If I want to go full time at work, I'm sure hopefully I'll have the option. Or if I want to expand my dance class, it's not like there isn't demand, there's demand.
Right.
But I feel like this is what I have actively sought and created, and I want to
Hmm.
keep it at that level. So I don't second guess myself. And I have to be able to live with my own decisions and feel happy. So to a large extent, I can't say I've lived life with regrets. I mean, I do look at the dancers whom I was dancing with when I used to live in Chennai, and my very active performing career, which is non-existent now. I'm not an active performer, but I have no regrets. I'm happy where I am.
That is actually the one most wonderful answer one can get for such a question, and I'm very happy you shared that. It is very important to first accept that we are making the decisions, and we have had the choice when we
Yes.
made the decision.
Yes.
So after making it, not to second guess is a very important pointer, especially for youngsters. So
Yes.
what would be your main message or messages for young aspiring artists who want to take up arts as their profession, whether to teach or perform? So what advice would you give them?
Okay. That what you asked was very specific. It's not for students of this, but students who are so serious that they want to take this up as a profession or as teaching. Okay.
Right. Or
So,
even students who are learning. I just don't
okay.
want it to be too specific. Thank you for
Okay.
pointing that out.
Okay, because that's a
So
different, intensity altogether. So
right,
for
right.
general students of art, the question I always want to ask yourself is it good enough for you to be a more informed audience than being on stage? Because
Hmm.
there's huge joy in watching a fabulous performance, and for classical arts, being an informed audience makes you that much more appreciative of all the little nuances on stage, right?
Right, right.
So are you doing this only because you want to be on stage, Or is it okay for them, somebody else to be on stage, but for you to be still enjoying their performance?
Right.
Because it is obviously much less intense if the goal is not always to be that person on stage,
Right.
the next star on stage,
Right.
whoever that is. So if that pressure is first not there, and you're learning for the sake of learning and just growing yourself, I think the gifts will come later, where the goalpost is not the next competition entry to go to, or the next little performance at the temple, or the next arangetram that you're going to perform, or whatever.
Right.
But you're just journeying along, and
Right.
the journey itself is the goal.
Right.
I think that for any student, if you have that luxury of accepting that first, it will make you a much happier, your dance experience or your art experience a much happier thing.
Right.
For people who are taking this up seriously, to either be performers or teachers, I think the approach has to be much more holistic. They have to make the investment to learn Indian languages, to read poetry in those languages, to really immerse yourself in music and dance, learn talam, learn natwangam, because it is not enough to be one thing these days.
Right.
So for there are 2-3 students of mine who are that interested. For them, I do separate, natwangam lessons, or I give them drills on, or I teach them, we have a lot of discussion about mythology. How is it relevant to today? Because there is a lot of, which is very required for this time, feminist thought. And how does that, is that at odds with the kind of heroines we portray in our Varnams? Why is it okay to be subservient to somebody else who's often a male god, right? Even though you say it's a god. So these discussions are also very essential, because if you're not convinced about what you're doing, you can't really portray that.
Right.
So I think absolutely, for serious students of dance, I mean, a lifetime of immersion won't be enough. But if you're going to get swayed by performance opportunities, awards, money, whatever it is, it can become very frustrating, because the arts are not always a very fair world, and it's not a meritocracy.
I mean, it's a different game altogether, right? You will start playing somebody else's game.
Yes.
If you invest yourself for any of these externalities, quote unquote, you are going to be automatically playing somebody else's game. Sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. But I would rather lose myself in learning and acquiring the art and becoming one with the art than any of these other external so-called perks or advantages or goals even, right?
My father told me this when I was in 12th grade, thinking about college, wanting to do dance full time. He said, you're doing dance professionally and doing it as a serious hobby are two different things. If you tell yourself that you're not going to get frustrated, you're not going to get politicky, then do it by all means. And, it's a luxury at some level, because let's all admit, pursuit of the arts at some level is an indulgence, especially dance is expensive. If you look at a dance performance, everybody other than the dancer will benefit, whether it's your makeup person, costumer, your guru, your orchestra members, everybody is getting paid, most often not the dancer, right? Or not enough. So once you make it your profession, I think the room for frustration is much more. But to keep it as a hobby is these days a luxury also. So I want to admit that, it's, if you're in that position to be lucky to be able to do that, more power to you.
Right. Wow. Very, very insightful, very thought-provoking, and very satisfying. I feel like I got the answers exactly that I was looking for from this interview with you. Dance always being my first passion. I am very happy today. Thank you very much, Sunanda, for sharing your precious time with me and many of the people who are watching this. And many thanks to your family for giving this time.
They're all on different Zoom calls in different parts of the house.
I know. And I hope things turn around and we see some positivity, especially people who are really, struggling and who are really affected. And thank you for being such an amazing artist in this area and inspiring many of us. Continue to do that for long time to come. And I really wish you lots of good health, lots of memories, more memories to cherish with all your students and gurus, and lot of more exploration and experience towards with the Association of Arts. Thank you so much. You have really pulled the community together in many occasions, and I'm very thankful to you and Durga. I just had her interview a few days ago. You both have really brought the musicians and dancers together, and I've attended some of the productions you have led, and your mom has given music as well as choreography. I was very fortunate to have attended Lalgudi's tribute, right? Lalgudi sir's tribute. And recently, I think I came for that Bharati's, event that you had in Chinmaya. So again, many thanks to you and Durga for pulling the artists together, bringing them together for noble causes and, for the greater good. And I think the artists in our area, there is no ego. Nobody thinks they're better than the other. Everybody has a different path. They have had different experiences and a different journey. And when it all comes together, it's so beautiful. It's so beautiful to even experience that. So I find myself to be very, very lucky to be here and to have evolved as an artist being around all of you. So thank you very much.
I feel the same. Thank you. This is such a lovely conversation with you, and you are such a inspiration to everyone in the community too, being so welcoming of all of us and making us feel so good, especially at this time. So it's been a treat talking to you. Thank you.
I have been missing meeting all of you, because summer is when all the Arangetams happen.
Yes.
And we are all dolled up. We just meet our friends, and then the chit chats, the laughter, the food, the exchanges, I really miss all of that. And I was thinking, for many reasons, I should just create this platform so we can share.
What a beautiful,
Thank you so much. And let the Kala Yatra continue for all of us.
Yes.
And hope to see you soon in person. And stay home, stay safe. Namaste.
Thank you, Aparna.
Namaste, Sananda. Yeah.